Hello and welcome back to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I am sitting in front of my movie corner. I have my Through Faith t-shirt on, my Gospel of John movie next to me, and judging by the frame around me, we are back, taking down another... Well, I wouldn't know if he's an atheist or an agnostic, but this is Inspiring Philosophy's Top 10 Biblical Problems for Young Earth Creationism. On the last part, we had talked a little bit about some of the biblical dates and some of the things that were going on. What doesn't make any sense is that Inspiring Philosophy is talking about Genesis chapter 5. Then he pivots, and talks about Genesis chapter kind of 10 and 11. Then goes back and says, well, hey, look at our Genesis chapter 5 video on inflated dates. He doesn't explain what theological implications there are, should there come any thing like this. When I mentioned biblical kind last time, somebody posted up in my comments that they said, well, wouldn't that make apes and humans the same kind? And I'll just say this, okay, because I posted it in the comments, but I'm also going to mention it here. The problem with that comes in, if you're going to believe that you descended from an ape, and I'm not suggesting that you do this, okay, so don't take this as a literal suggestion. But with every kind, you can mate with them, and you can create some kind of offspring. That offspring might be sterile, might be a genetic dead end, but it's there. So for instance, if you mate a donkey and a horse, any kind of a horse, you get a mule. Now the mule is sterile, it is genetically a dead end, okay? But you can do that, right? You can mate those two because they're of the same equine kind. That's what we're talking about here. If you, as an evolutionist, believed that you could go have sex with monkeys and create some sort of offspring, you can't. And I'm not suggesting that you should. I'm saying you personally can't. Because the chromosomal count is different. Okay? And I've mentioned this many, many times before. And so many people blow right past it because they have no answer for it. And because they have no answer for it, they just blow right past it, and they still want to believe that they descended from monkeys. Fine. You want to believe you descended from monkeys? Go for it. But I can guarantee you, right now, today, that ain't happening. Okay? So now, we're going to jump back into this. Okay? And we're going to do this. We're going to jump into the next point or two. Okay? Now, I only went about 5 minutes into this video, so once we get past this point, I don't really have much else to say. But this next point is going to be very, very easy to debunk. Okay? Oh, and there was another one that a person did. Ha! He said, oh, Ken Hovind's going to fight you on this one. Fight me on what? Ken Hovind and I agree on everything that I've been talking about. Like him, Ken Ham, all these other guys, they all agree with me. Why would they be fighting me on this? If anything, they'd be agreeing with me. Okay? Now, would he maybe disagree with the version of the Bible I'm using? Maybe, but that's more of a doctrinal difference, not an actual difference in what we're saying or what I'm debunking. Okay? So if that's your argument, it's no argument, because that's not an argument. You'd have to bring up why Ken Hovind would actually fight me on this. Okay? If anything, he's going to agree with me on most everything I say. Okay? So, let's jump back into this, and let's continue forward.
Number 9. Genesis 8. A common view among young Earth believers is the idea that the Earth was covered in a global flood about 4,000 years ago.
It's very true.
When Genesis records that God flooded the Earth, it should be understood as literally the entire globe, because it says the waters covered the face of the whole Earth.
Yes, that's true. Because as I stated in my debunk of the flat Earth stuff on Brent Wessels' channel, okay, or on his spreadsheet about the Bible verses for flat Earth, the debunk that I'm doing there, okay, the problem comes in when you don't understand that I have this nice little thing called the Strongest Concordance, okay? Basically, it has every single word from the NIV translation in it, okay? What word was translated what, okay? And as stated many times on that channel, the word for earth in Hebrew that is translated in Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2, Genesis chapter 4, Genesis chapter 6, 7, 8, 9, okay, 10, 11, 14, 18, 19, 22, 24, 26, 28, 45, and 48. Okay? Most every single word that is translated as earth, okay, is number 824. I have them bookmarked because I come to this one almost all the time when I'm doing the Brent Wessels video, okay? Because literally it's the same word, okay? It's Erez. It means world, earth, all inhabited lands, parts of the earth, land in contrast to water, ground, soil, country, region, territory. Heaven and earth means the totality of creation. The ends of the earth means a very distant place. Okay? And it's translated earth 524 times. In fact, if I go back, okay, there's earth right here. And you can see where, with the exception of 1 of 141 here, 1 of 141 here, 1 of 141 here, all of these are 824. Okay? Including Genesis chapter 6. Okay? Now, the 141 translation. Now, the 141 translation, okay, is Dhamma. Okay, that means earth, the entire surface of the place where humans dwell, as well as smaller regions, land, with a focus on the elements of the earth, ground, soil, dust. A man of the soil, fruit of the soil, are crops. And basically what they're saying here is that it was translated earth 30 times. And where it was translated earth was when Jesus, or when God says, I'm going to destroy all flesh on the earth. He's talking about the place where humans dwell. Okay? That's what he's talking about. Now, in this passage right here where it says the waters were still on the face of the whole earth, this Genesis 8:9b, okay, is over all the surface of the earth, 824. 824, as we heard before, okay, is Erez. It means world, earth, all inhabited lands. Okay? That's what they're talking about when they do that. Okay? They're not talking about a region or a country. They're talking about the whole earth. Okay? I mean, that's literally what the friggin' passage says. Right there. On the face of the whole earth. Why would it be a regional flood? This is the biggest thing that I see atheists and agnostics and evolutionists, whenever they want to try to discount the flood, they always come at it from the standpoint of, oh, well, this was just a regional flood. It just flooded Noah's little valley where he lived. Then I just got to ask this question. It's a rhetorical question, but I just got to ask this question. If that was the case, okay, that there was some massive flood that just happened to flood the place where Noah lived, why did God have Noah build a huge boat? Why are there 200 plus cultures on the earth with flood legends that talk about the whole earth being covered in water? That talk about a guy on a boat with his family and a bunch of animals. If it was just a local flood. I still have yet to have anyone explain that stupid argument. Because that's what it is. It is stupid to think that they would have to inflate it to be this, oh, it covered the whole world. Ha ha ha, what a joke. Oh, it just flooded Noah's little world. No, it didn't. Because why would God have told him to build a boat? Why would God have told him to do any of that? Why didn't he just say, hey, Noah, there's going to come a flood here pretty soon. Why don't you and your family just pack up and move 200 miles in that direction and you'll be fine? And Noah would have been like, okay. That is the most idiotic thing that I've ever heard in my life. And the point is that the reason why they want it to be that way is so that they can point to the layers of dirt and they can say, well, see, this one's this many thousands of years old, this one's this many millions of years old, this one's this many hundreds of millions of years old, this one's this many 200 million years old, this one's 400 million years old, this one's billions of years. Because if they don't have that, they don't have their stupid-ass theory. Okay? And that's the point. They have to make the Bible seem like it's inflating everything for no other reason than to be able to look and say, see, the layers of dirt are millions of years old. We know that they're millions of years old, even though we don't know that they're millions of years old, but we know that they're millions of years old because we have these fossils in them that were laid down by a flood. But hey, we can't admit that, because if we admit that, then we admit that the Bible's real. And sorry, son, this is not an argument. The literal Hebrew word there is world. Deal with it. See, this is the problem that atheists, agnostics, evolutionists have when it comes to reading the Bible. Okay? They just pick up a Bible, they turn to a verse, okay? For instance, Genesis chapter 8, they look at verse 9, and they say, but the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. And they go, oh, well, that must have just been Moses being hyperbolic. See, we know that the earth is billions of years old, so we know that these layers are millions of years old, even though we have no erosion marks. We have, we don't have any transitional forms, even though Darwin said that we should have innumerable transitional forms. We don't have any other evidence to back up our claims. But yeah, we know that this happened, so Moses is just being hyperbolic here. He doesn't understand anything. What does he know? He's just an ignorant caveman. Except Moses wasn't an ignorant caveman. This is the biggest misnomer that most people have. Oh, that Bible, that was written by a bunch of ignorant shepherds, thousands of years ago. They didn't understand anything. Oh, really? Well, I happen to know, because this Bible tells us, and also because we have historical and archaeological references to this, that Moses was absolutely real. He actually lived in Egypt for a time, and then disappeared, and came back, and took the Israelites out of Egypt. This we know. Okay? Because when they stumbled upon the tomb of Ramesses II, and they stumbled across the tomb of his father, they stumbled across the tomb of some of the other pharaohs, they saw some of these things that happened. Okay? Some of these things that actually happened. Okay? In fact, in just doing some research on the Bible, it turns out that Shishak in the Bible, the Hebrew name of Shishak, who was a pharaoh of Egypt around the time of the later kings after Solomon, okay, was actually, I think it was Shoshak the First, who was a pharaoh of Egypt at a certain period in time of that time, and they know he's there because there are actual records of him attacking Israelite cities, okay, and taking plunder and, you know, doing some different things, just as it says in this book. So sit there and say, oh, the Bible was written by ignorant hicks that didn't know anything, just proves that the only ignorant hick around here is you, if you're the one saying that. Okay? If you're going to sit there and go down into my comment section and go, oh, the Bible was written by ignorant hicks, you're the ignorant hick, because Moses was a prince of Egypt. Okay? And he was educated by the Egyptians. So he wasn't ignorant. He knew as much as there was to know about Egyptian culture, about the Hebrews, about their movements, when they came into the land, how they became enslaved and everything. He even killed an Egyptian and then left afterwards, and then came back later and was like, you know, I'm here to rescue my people, let my people go. Pharaoh refused, and he takes him out. Okay? So Moses was not an ignorant hick. And anyone who thinks that he was is themselves ignorant, because they don't know the history. History that is actually backed up by secular history, by accounts in Egypt. Okay? Because we know how to speak Egyptian thanks to the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone being a gigantic stone that had Greek, Egyptian, and one other language written on it, and because we knew what the Greek letters were saying, we were able to translate the Egyptian and the other language, and it helped immensely. That's the reason why the language software is called Rosetta Stone. Is because they're literally referring to the Rosetta Stone, the literal tablet that was found, that had the same warning written in 3 different languages. And so it was pretty easy once we figured out, you know, okay, so here's what all these letters mean. So now if we take this and we move it up here, we can start to look and see what letters equal what letters. And then we looked down and we looked and saw all the other ones in the 3rd language. And so we were able to figure out, because we knew one language, we were able to figure out the other 2. And so we knew what those 3 languages were. And then we can start to puzzle together other languages, because when we start to look at those, we realize that every single language has a common root. And guess where that common root started? Genesis chapter 11, people. In the Tower of Babel.
But there is a problem for this view within Genesis 8. Verses 4 and 5 say the ark came to rest in the mountains of Ararat or Aratu, and the tops of the mountains could be seen at this point. However, later in the chapter, Noah releases a dove, and it returns to him because the waters were still on the face of the whole earth.
Are you seeing a problem here? Read between the lines. Read before the lines. Read after the lines. Read in between the lines. Let's read chapter 8. It's called The Flood Subsides. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him on the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. The fountains of the deep and the windows of the heavens were closed, and the rains from the heavens were restrained, and the waters receded from the earth continually. At the end of 150 days, the waters had abated. And in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. And the waters continued to abate until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day of the month, the tops of the mountains were seen. So what happened when the ark came to rest between that and the tops of the mountains being seen? What happened? It's right here. Right there. 2.5 months. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you expecting that everything just went whoosh and gone? It doesn't work like that. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you expecting some gigantic revelation that when you actually read the text, it tells you exactly what's going on? Or were you just expecting that God just went click and everything just went dry in half a minute? Oh, of course, God could have done that, but he didn't. Okay? He allowed the water to drain away because that's the only way for the seeds to become viable. If you ever see what happens after a flood, plant life returns. It takes a little bit of time because the water has to drain away and the seeds have to take root. And the seeds take root because the soil is loose. The seeds fall into the soil, and then as the soil dries, it compacts around the seed. And then eventually, the seed sprouts. Son of a bitch, you're talking about they actually have science in the fucking Bible? Are you kidding me? Yes, it does actually have science in the Bible. Thousands of years before we ever knew what was actually going on, yes, the Bible actually has science in it. If you'd bother to ever frickin' read. This is the major problem with most atheists, is they'll highlight something like, oh, see, the ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, and then, oh, the tops of the mountains were seen, and then the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So, how could you see the tops of the mountains and the waters still be on the whole earth? Tops of the mountain? If I were to, grab something, I don't have anything right off hand, and I were to put it in my water cup, okay, and I were to just pull the top of it out, okay, would the whole figure be visible, or just the top of it? I mean, granted, you'd be able to see the figure, like if I had an action figure and I stuck him in there and I pulled just his hand out, of course you'd be able to see the figure in my water glass. What I mean is that sticking out of the water, is it the whole figure or just his hand? I'm betting it's just his hand. The same thing would happen if I were to go sit in a bathtub or in a pool, okay, and I were to dunk my whole head under, and then I were to just poke my nose and my mouth just up above the water. Would my whole face and my whole body be visible if it was still underwater? Or would it just be the tip of my nose and my chin? Think about it. If you're only seeing this much of something, is the whole thing visible? Oh, I'm sorry. Again, were you expecting some earth-shattering revelation other than just reading the damn text? Let's continue then. At the end of 40 days. So, here again, between the 10th month, the first day of the month, when the tops of the mountains become visible, just the tops of the mountains of Ararat became visible. Okay? Because you have to figure that as they're going down, depending on how much of a keel the ark took up, okay? If, like, say, half of the ark was actually sunk down into the water, okay, and it were to come to rest, then you got to figure how tall was the ark. You can go to the Ark Encounter in Kentucky and take a look at it, or you can read Genesis chapter 6 and do some calculations yourself. Okay? The side's 30 cubits. So let's say 15 cubits of that, okay, which is about 22 feet, okay, comes to rest on the mountains. It takes a little while for that 22 feet to drain away so that the tops of the mountains are now visible. Okay? And that also depends on, like, how far down the mountain they were when they rested on it. It doesn't say that it came to rest on the top, came to rest on the bottom, came to rest in the middle. It just says it came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Okay? Now, at the end of 40 days, this is verse 6 in chapter 8, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made, and sent forth a raven. It went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Verse 8, Then he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. Verse 9, But the dove found no place to set her foot, and she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took her, and brought her into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and behold, in her mouth was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days, and sent forth the dove, and she did not return to him any more. So literally, 54 days after the ark rested, okay, when the tops of the ark rested, okay, then 2.5 months later, the tops of the mountains were seen, okay, because the 17th month, 17th day of the month, okay, then it goes until the 10th of the month, first day of the month, so about 2.5 months, okay, the tops of the mountains are seen, then 40 days before he sent out the dove, the first time. So if we take 30 days, so that's 60, plus another, 2 weeks minus 3 days, okay, so 11 days, okay, so 77 days, right, so we're at 77 days, then he takes her back in, waits 7 days, okay, so he waits the 40 days, that's now another 110 days, okay, from when they came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. That was another 110 days, okay, then he waits 7 more days, that's 117 days, sends out the dove, it comes back with an olive leaf, then he waited 7 more days, sent her out, she never came back. So now that's 124 days. Do you understand that that's another 4 damn months from the time they came to rest until the time they actually walked out of the ark? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you not know how to count? You can't sit there and ignore the amount of time that is going on and then turn around and go, oh, well, they said the tops of the mountains and then the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. Yeah, because it was 2.5 months since they came to rest before the tops of the mountains were seen. Then it was another 40 days, And the dove couldn't find a place to set her foot because the waters were still covering the earth. Because if you've ever seen a flood, okay, the flood water literally continues, like it'll stay in like a little thin in like a little thin patch for days. And the ground is very soft. Okay? And so yeah, I could imagine that it took a long time for that to happen. Okay? So we're talking about 4 months between when it came to rest, when it just came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, until they left the ark. 4 months. Okay? It's not like they came to rest and then just proceeded right out of the friggin' ark. Again, you would have to be one of the most ignorant people on the face of the earth not to be able to do simple math. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, let's do this. No, I'm literally sitting here saying, let's look at this. 10th month, that means the 9th month, the 8th month, they were still in the ark, and then it came to rest on the 17th day. So that was 11 days before the end of the 7th month, and then the 8th month, the 9th month, and then on the 10th day, on the first day of the 10th month, that's when they saw the tops of the mountains. So 2.5 months. And I took a conservative estimate of 30 days per month. Just saying, because our Gregorian monks, put a whole bunch of different things in there. I'm just calling it on average 30 days. Okay? That's 60 days plus 11. That's 71. Okay? 71 days until Genesis 8:9 happens. Actually, no, that's just until the tops of the mountains were seen. Then another 40 days. So, at 71, that's 111. 77 plus 4 is 11. Plus 1. So, 111. Plus another 14 days. So, it's 125 days from when the ark came to rest until they actually were able to walk out of the ark on solid frickin' ground. Again, I'm sorry, were you expecting some earth-shattering revelation? Were you expecting some, aha moment? No, it's very simple because the Bible tells us exactly what's going on. If you'd bother to even read it. But the problem is the eisegesis that happens when you decide that you want to read your own interpretation into the text and you want to cherry pick harder than every other Christian on the planet. And then you want to blame Christians for the ones that were being the cherry pickers. I'm sorry, did you not see this? We're not the cherry pickers, folks. We never have been. The cherry pickers are people like Inspiring Philosophy and Aaron Ra, who sit there and try to yell and scream from the rooftops that they have some new interpretation of the Bible. They don't. They're just cherry picking. Because they know that if they take everything in context, it absolutely destroys their narrative.
But didn't verse 5 say the tops of the mountains were seen?
Yeah! 40 days beforehand! And again, that's the top of the mountain, not the whole mountain. Duh! It didn't say all of the mountains were seen. It just said the tops of the mountains. Doesn't say how much of the top of the mountain was seen. It just says they were able to look out of the window and go, oh, hey, we can actually see the tops of the mountains. Guys, come here. Look. Look, you can see the mountains. Look. They're like, oh, yeah, you can see the tops of the mountains. All right, cool. That's it. There's a huge difference between the tops of the mountains and seeing the whole mountain. I mean, anyone flying over certain mountains during certain times of the year will know that. Okay? Like, I've been over Mount Rainier in Washington State a number of times, and there are times when you can only see just the very tippy top of the mountain because the clouds cover the base. Oh, son of a bitch. What a revelation. Yeah. Oh, look, I can only see the top of Mount Rainier. Oh, does that mean that there are no clouds anywhere on the earth because I can only see the top of the mountain? No, it means that there's clouds because I can only see the top of the damn mountain. Think about it, IP. Figure it out, man. You can still have waters on the earth after 40 days, okay? Because if you're going to cover the earth, with water to a height of like 15 cubits above the highest mountain, okay? You're talking a lot of frickin' water, man. Okay? And it takes a while for the ocean basins to collapse down enough and then the water to drain off. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen in like a week. As evidenced by the friggin' text. In case you'd ever bother to ever fucking read the Bible. And this is the worst kind of crap that I have with these kind of people, is when they try to say, oh, well, we know what the Bible says better than you Christians do. No, you don't. You want to talk about plain reading of the text, son, because you actually mentioned that in the previous part of this. Read the friggin' text. It tells you exactly what happens. You even put it on the damn screen and then bypassed it to come up with this dumbass narrative of, oh, see, well, down here it says the waters were still on the face of the whole earth, but up here it says the tops of the mountains were seen. Yeah, after 40 fucking days. Don't you think that, well, more of the water would have subsided by then in 40 days? I would think so, but probably not enough to dry out the whole earth, you dumbass. Again, were you expecting some big revelation? No. If you've ever seen a flood, if you've ever seen the aftermath of a flood, and water doesn't just dry up like that. It takes time. Why do you think the government started a national flood insurance program? Because people's houses were destroyed because water doesn't dry up magically. You guys sit there and talk about a magical sky daddy, and yet you guys are the ones wanting to believe in magic. That is the biggest hypocrisy in the world. Son, read the text.
So verse 9 cannot mean the waters were literally covering the whole earth.
Yes, it can.
Applying the entire flood account might be hyperbolic in its description of the flood. And this...
No, it wasn't. Because again, okay, in seeing floods in my lifetime, because there have been some floods where I live, I have seen videos and photos of floodplains back in the Great Plains era along the Mississippi River. Okay? Because this guy's been living in a fucking bubble his whole entire life. He doesn't know what a flood is. And he doesn't know that the flood, when the floodwaters subside, the floodwaters don't just magically dry up. And anyone who lives on a floodplain can tell you that. Now, I don't live on a floodplain, but there are some floodplains around me that if we get enough of a snowpack, yeah, we can get floodwaters where I live. Now, they won't get as high as where I'm at the elevation that I'm at, But there are some areas around where I live that can flood and have flooded. And no, it doesn't just magically clean up in a day. It takes fucking time. The one time that time is your ally in any kind of a thing, where you might be able to say maybe it took too long for the earth to dry out, the one time where you could make fun of time is the one time you're not using time. And it's absolutely idiotic. Because, son, here we have about a minute and a half, and I've totally destroyed your entire argument just using one document. And a little bit of common sense. It's not like I'm sitting here with some biblical degree going, no, that says, no, dude. It literally says, right in the Bible, and you literally put it on the screen. And you just you just blew right by it to fit your own damn narrative. And then you think that we're the ones that think that... And then you want to say that the Bible's being hyperbolic when you're the one that is literally cherry-picking information and being hyperbolic. You want to say that it was being hyperbolic. And this is where he's going to start getting into this regional flood garbage, okay? This absolute nonsense of a regional flood idea.
It would mean it was not literally covering the entire globe, but just a regional area. This is also supported by verse 13, where it says the waters dried from the earth.
Yeah. 125 days after the ark came to rest. Literally. Okay. In the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried from off the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked around, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. Yeah, 125 days after the ark came to rest. Oh, I'm sorry, again, were you expecting some earth-shattering revelation? Because again, you'd have to be some kind of an idiot not to understand this. That you can't count the days to see how long did it take from the time that God started that God remembered Noah in verse 1 to verse 13 to go, oh, shit, like fucking 5 months passed. Or 4.5 months passed. From the time that they came to rest in the 17th day of the 7th month until the 601st year in the first month, the first day of the month, that they walked off the damn ark, it was like 4.5 months. Wow! That's a hell of a lot of time. No, verse 13 does not support your regional flood bullshit. Okay? Because again, if it was a regional flood, why didn't God just tell Noah, move? Why did he have him build a boat? Why didn't he have him build a sailing ship? Okay? If he could just sail somewhere. Because there was nowhere to sail to! Oh, I'm sorry, again, was that supposed to be some earth-shattering revelation? Considering that they're finding intact ruins, okay, on the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, okay, intact human ruins that date back about 4,000 to 5,000 years, right in line with just around the time that the flood ended, okay, and the people would have been scattered from the Tower of Babel. And so guess what happened? People went out and settled in places, and then at Gibraltar, the ocean broke over the rock, the dam that the rock posed at the Iberian Peninsula there, between Morocco and the Iberian Peninsula of Spain and Portugal, and flooded in and would have flooded out those places, and the people would have moved up. onto islands, onto land, onto different places. Hence why you have places like Santorini and Crete and all of these other places. Duh. I mean, again, dude, can you not effing read? This does not support his idiotic regional flood bullshit. Because he can't count, number one, and number two, he's not reading the whole text. He's just cherry-picking certain parts and then eisegeting into them that, oh, it happened too fast. It said that this was dried. Yeah. 4.5 months after they landed. Again, dude, think about it. Read the damn book.
But this obviously cannot literally mean the entire globe, since most of the surface of the Earth is still covered by water.
So? When they're talking about the face of the Earth, they're talking about all inhabited lands, my man. Oh, I'm sorry, again, was that supposed to be some major revelation? When I can tell you from this that it says all inhabited lands? The world? It can be. Because where did all that water come from then? Did it rain on the rocks for millions of years because it magically created water by itself? Because one oxygen, two hydrogen molecules happen to just link together somehow and create a water droplet, and enough of them bonded together to create water and then start forming and dropping rain magically and as if by magic? Because that's what your side believes, son. So where did all that water come from? I'll give you a hint. Crust of the Earth. That's right, the hydroplate theory. In fact, we know that there's actually vents on the bottom that are still gushing water in there into the oceans today. So again, was that supposed to be some massive revelation? I don't understand where this guy's getting this crap from. The water had to go somewhere. Okay? In fact, the book of Job clearly says, okay, when the Lord is talking to Job in 38 through 41, he literally sits there and is like, who causes the sea to come so far? Who says to the sea, stop, you shall go no further? I feel like that dude when he's like doing, and the people are trying to do the life hacks and he does that little thing. He's like, literally, it's like he literally says, or who shut the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb? When I made it the clouds its garment, and thick darkness its swaddling band, and prescribed limits for it, and set bars and doors, and said, thus far you shall come, and no farther, and here shall your proud waves be stayed. Have you entered into the springs of the sea, or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been revealed to you, or have you seen the gates of deep darkness? Have you comprehended the expanse of the earth? Declare if you know all this. Oh, I'm sorry. Again, were you expecting something different? Because, dude, literally, okay, I just owned your ass using one book. Okay? I just owned your regional flood idea. Just using two separate books out of the Old Testament. Genesis and Job. Because it's literally saying that he caused the fountains of the deep to break open and then told the waves, you'll go this far and no further. So, when they're talking about, okay, the whole earth being dried up, they're talking about all inhabited lands. Because again, that's 824, the Hebrew word erez. Okay? Again, I'm not some major Bible scholar. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a person who's got like a master's in divinity or has done a lot of different things. I'm just a guy who's been called to do apologetics. Okay? And if I'm owning this guy this hard, okay, just using 2 books of the Bible, Genesis and Job, okay, literally the Lord speaking, first to Moses and then to Job, I'm sorry, you don't have a leg to stand on, son. Let's go a little bit longer.
So it appears the flood account is describing the flood hyperbolically.
No, it's not.
It doesn't necessarily teach the entire globe was covered. Number 8.
So, okay, so here again. If that was the flood, then why didn't he just tell Noah, move? Move, one way or the other. And also, let me ask you another question. Why is the world's largest deposit of biomass right here? Why is it right here? That's where, like, 90% of the world's oil comes from. Again, were you expecting some big revelation? You expecting some earth-shattering thing? You have to ask yourself, okay? And if that happened, why isn't that still there today? If it flooded out like that, why isn't it still flooded? And don't tell me it's because it's an arid climate. Because there's the Red Sea and there's still the Gulf of Aqaba. So if this was what happened, why isn't it still flooded that way? Because all that water would have had to have gone somewhere, okay? And it would have to go somewhere, and it would have to create some kind of a remnant, which we don't see. Okay? This is a computer simulated bullshit argument, okay, that these guys are trying to use to try to say, see, it could have just been a regional flood. Assuming that's where Noah lived. We don't know where Noah lived. Okay? The Bible doesn't say where Noah lived. Oops. What if this wasn't the region that flooded? And again, if it was, why didn't God just tell Noah to pack up his family and move? Why would there be civilizations up here in the Mediterranean?
Genesis 2:24. Young Earth creationists are often proud of the fact, and almost go so far as to brag, that they just take the plain reading of Scripture.
Yeah.
And don't have to reinterpret anything.
Of course not.
In my debate with...
Well, because here's the thing, okay? What happened when IP reinterpreted the Bible? Just now, he tried to reinterpret the reading of Genesis chapter 8. He tried to reinterpret it, and I just destroyed him on it. With a plain reading of the text, by the way, okay? This is not some, like, high-level, like, oh, I used all of this stuff to prove him wrong. No, I literally just read the text and added the dates. Okay? Literally just read the text and added the dates. And I owned his ass on that point. So here's what you have to ask yourself. Okay? If you're some kind of atheist watching this, if you're an agnostic, maybe you don't understand the Bible, maybe you're a Christian, you're kind of new to the faith, welcome. But if you've made it this far into the thing, okay? Ask yourself this question. If IP is so far off of reading the text that he can't even add the dates together and then try to come at it from the standpoint of, okay, well, so it made this many, made this, did this. No. He tried to reinterpret the text, and I only owned him on the fact that I just plain read the text and then added the dates together. That's all I did. Go back and watch. Okay? And then I came forward and I said, yeah, and so here's the thing. From the 7th month to the 1st month, 17th day of the month, so about 4.5 months. Go back and check the text yourself. See if I'm the one lying or if he's the one lying. Okay? And you can read it. Okay? It's literally Genesis 8, verses 1 through 13. I mean, I'd read down through chapter 19, or verse 19. But basically, okay, you can check it. And you can see what I'm doing. Because, honestly, I'm not the one, okay, that is reinterpreting the text. I'm doing a plain reading of the text. He's the one trying to reinterpret the text. And again, if I'm owning him this hard on when he's trying to reinterpret the text that bad, and I just owned him using only Genesis and Job, okay, and that was Job chapter 38, by the way, okay, it's literally Job 38, and it's verses 8 through 11, and then verses 16 through 18, okay, and so just using those passages, because most of that text of Job 38 through 41 is a bunch of rhetorical questions by God to Job, okay? He's basically establishing himself as who he is, the creator of the universe, okay? Like literally his first question is, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? It's pretty much a conversation killer right there. I mean, if God were to show up tonight in your bedroom, IP, and say, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? What would your answer be? Would it be, oh, well, you're just dumb, you don't exist? No, you'd probably be sitting there quaking in your boots going, yeah, I get it, I don't know anything. Which is exactly what Job did. Okay? In fact, he does it twice. He's like, okay, God, I get it. You're God, I'm not. So no, you can't just reinterpret crap and expect it to be whatever you want it to be when the plain reading of the text debunks every point you make. So now let's see what he says here on Genesis 2:24, and then we'll call it an episode.
Kent Hovind, I asked if he takes all of Genesis 1 and 2 literally, and he replied,
I have a question for Ken on Genesis 2. Do you take the entire chapter of Genesis 2 literally?
Absolutely.
But this is actually impossible, because Genesis 2:24 cannot be understood literally. After Adam is introduced to Eve, it reads, Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh.
What do you think that means? Do you think that literally means that they're going to merge together, or does that mean that in the bonds of sexuality and marriage, that those two are now joining, and when they procreate, they create one flesh, i.e. a child in their image? Because I look a lot like my brother now, but like, I call myself the mud of the family. Because if you take my brother and you stick him next to my dad, okay, he and my dad look a lot alike, okay? I mean, it's like, there's no two ways about it. Like, he and my dad look a lot alike. I'm the mutt, because you stick me next to my dad, I look like my dad. You stick me next to my mom, I look like my mom, okay? Like, I'm the mutt, okay? So I'm the literal interpretation of this. Because everybody is, okay? When you are born, okay, you are literally the representation of your mom and your dad coming together. Okay? You are the literal representation of one flesh. That's literally what it means. It means that they have a child. Are you dumb? Because if he's going to sit there and think that this is because they're supposed to merge together and like literally meld together like some crazy flippin' sci-fi show bullshit, then he's an absolute idiot and should not be taken seriously at all, ever.
Since married couples are not sewn together, this obviously cannot be understood as literal. Some young earth believers...
Did I call it or what? Oh my fucking god. Dude! Literally! Like, oh my god. Like, okay, all through the ages, okay, through every single translation that we've ever had of the Bible, people understand, okay, that two becoming one flesh does not mean that they're going to be sewn together or some bullshit like that. Oh my god, that is fucking hilarious right now. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look up the literal Hebrew of one and flesh. Okay? Okay. So, 285. Is Yihad. One. A certain one first. Okay. Now, if we look... I think if we look down here and we see where it says... It says joined together, but it doesn't have just one flesh. But flesh... is 14:14. Okay. So... Actually, here, let me grab this. I'm going to shove it in there. 14:14. Basar, flesh, the soft tissue mass of any animal, the whole body, particular parts of the body, meat, skin, genitals, etc., by extension, humankind, living things. So, literally, it just means, okay, that when they become one flesh, okay, it literally means, like, by extension, humankind, living things, flesh, one flesh, okay? It doesn't mean that they're literally being sewn together. I mean, the notion that this is some sci-fi bullshit experiment is just hilariously funny to me, okay? I mean, it's like, if you're going to sit there and try to say that because the Bible says the two will become one flesh, and that means that they're literally going to be sewn together and, like, join into one lump and congealed mass, you're an idiot, son. Because all down through history, people have understood that the two becoming one flesh literally means being joined together in matrimony and having a child. Because the sexual act itself, we now understand this as well, the sexual act itself, part of you becomes part of the person, okay? So the actual act of friction causes blood and cells and things to be exchanged with each other, okay? Not just the act of the orgasm, which gives the sperm and the egg, and then you create a child, but there's actually an act of the actual friction, okay, leaves bits and pieces of you with that person, okay? And that's also what they mean by one flesh, is because the actual act of sex is a very intimate thing, and it's actually very connecting between the two people in a very literal way. Okay? Not so much so that you're going to literally meld together as one congealed mass, but that you actually do meet in the middle. Okay? And again, the sheer fact that IP doesn't know this means that A, he's never actually studied science, and B, he's very ignorant of what the passage is actually saying. And his interpretation is so off the mark that I would be willing to bet that even Bart Ehrman would say, IP, dude, you're wrong. Because I'll bet he'd be able to stand there and say, no, the Hebrew just means one flesh. It doesn't mean that they're literally joining together in some congealed, stapled mass. The hell are you talking about? People have understood this for thousands of years at this point. So the mere fact that here comes IP trying to, like, take some sci-fi human centipede bullshit and say, oh, they're not being stapled or sewn together. Oh, dude, you're so far off the mark it's not even funny anymore. I mean, this is the height of stupidity. Absolute stupidity. When you're so far off the mark that, like, nobody's laughing anymore. Okay? Not even laughing at you, we're just shaking our head and face-palming so hard that we're like that, the faith palm one where it says, you know, you fail a biblical, you know, fail of biblical proportions. That's literally what this is. Okay? It's like,
Try to get around this by saying it's a reference to procreation in the act of making children.
duh.
But that would mean they interpret the phrase becoming one flesh metaphorically.
No. No. What is in my flesh right now? What is in each one of the cells in my flesh right now? It's a 3-letter acronym. Deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. Okay? What's in my loins? Half of that DNA. 23 chromosomes. If I go out, get a wife, have sex with her, and we have a child, what is that child now? That child is half me, half her. Isn't that two becoming one flesh? Oh, I'm sorry. Again, were you expecting some earth-shattering revelation? Because again, you'd have to be some kind of an idiot not to understand this. It's not a metaphor. It's literally what is happening. You'd have to ask yourself, how did you get on the earth then if your parents didn't have sex? And why do you look like your parents? If it's not those two becoming one flesh, you have to ask yourself, how did that happen? That's what I'm saying. I'm the literal embodiment of father and mother hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Because if you put me next to my dad, I look like my dad. You put me next to my mom, I look like my mom. You put me in between the two, and I look like both of them. And I have the pictures to prove it. Because again, you'd have to be some kind of a scientifically illiterate moron not to understand this. Literally. Even scientists understand that this is what happens. Okay? This is literally what happens when two people have sex. That the offspring is literally one half the man, one half the woman, merged together. It is now one flesh. It is a unique, non-identical person. Because even if you have identical twins, they still have certain things, personality traits, bone structures, muscle structures, some different things that are a little bit out of place. Okay? They're not necessarily always identical. Well, they may look identical, but you dig down and you'll find out that they are not identical at all. They're two separate people. Okay? But they are one flesh, that is, they came from their parents. That's literally what it means, dude. And I just explained this to you.
To mean having offspring, since the text does not literally say to make children.
That's exactly what it's saying. That's literally what it's saying. And in fact, I just explained that. That's literally what it's saying. I've said that like 5 times now. Okay? So the mere fact that IP doesn't understand that they shall become one flesh means having a child, and also the fact that when you do have sex with another person, be you male or female, okay, parts of you become parts of them. Parts of them become parts of you. Okay? So yes, literally, you are becoming one flesh. Okay? But the notion of holding fast to his wife is one way that the ancient Hebrews talked about sex. Okay? So in that context, yes, this is literally talking about having children. Because they're saying, hold fast to his wife, that means doing the bumping uglies, okay, and then they shall become one flesh, that means having a child. And again, science has discovered that during intercourse, okay, the friction that is happening, okay, between the man and the woman, that blood and secretions and other things, okay, merge. And so, if you've ever had sex with another person, okay, be you a man with a woman or a woman with a man, if you've ever had sex with that person, you have a little bit of them inside of you. How do you think STDs get passed around, you moron? Oh, I'm sorry. Again, were you expecting some earth-shattering revelation? That's literally how we figured out how these sexually transmitted diseases get transmitted in the first place. Here again, you'd have to be some kind of an idiot not to get this. Literally. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment below, let me know what you think of this series so far. And I had some things come up this week, and so I've had some things happen, so it'll be next week as of filming this. And then the following week I'm going to be leaving for 9 days. I'm going to be seeing Dune 2 while I'm out of town, so I will do a review of Dune Part 2 when I see it. I'm also going to watch these movies again and kind of sit down and kind of do a comparison and contrast video as well. And as we say, we will see you on the next one.